Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. And we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5e and the Monster Manual. And the monster for today, as it happens, is the Ghoul, the undead friend. No, it's not really a friend, not at all. What I would say about the Ghoul is it is a creature that has lots of potential. It is just not necessarily implemented, and design of the Ghoul for Dungeons & Dragons 5e in particular doesn't really necessarily make it a tool or a monster that lends itself to being easy to use, which seems ridiculous when you look at the stat block for it. This is the undead French kisser of Dungeons & Dragons, essentially. Now, if you turn to page 148 of the Monster Manual, it has details on the lore and the stat block for the monster. It's got a nice picture as well. So for this video, what I would plan to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of information on the Ghoul. Then I'm going to cover and discuss the stat block. And at the end of the video, I'm going to talk about monster tactics and how you can implement this monster in your game to give it a bit more life and to also make it more effective at doing its job, which is really to end the player's characters. Essentially, that's what we're aiming for, not in a bad or nasty way, but we want to make it challenging and interesting for them, and hence that's what we're aiming for in terms of using this monster. An unending hunger to devour flesh from humanoids. That's the Ghoul. Its purpose is to just hunt down anything. It's got this hunger that just can't be stopped, and it will just devour flesh constantly. Now, AJ Pickett, who has a YouTube channel, has done a fantastic job of talking about the Ghoul, and I highly recommend checking out his video after this. Ghouls roam the night in packs, and they'll run down an unlucky victim. Basically, once you've been smelt or detected by these hungry undead, they will just run you down, kill you, and probably eat you. Ghouls will thrive in places with decay and death. They're usually haunting something like a graveyard or some sort of ruins, an ancient castle that has been left by its original designers or owners, or maybe just a bloody battlefield where there are lots of dead corpses hanging around. They aren't really doing very much, and of course that just seems like a good snack fest for them. It's rather odd how the Ghoul works, because although they gorge themselves on dead flesh and decomposing organs or corpses, the odd thing is they honestly don't need food. It's extremely odd that they are constantly trying to eat and consume and have this huge hunger because they don't need food of any kind to survive. They can last for a millennia without food whatsoever. So why are they doing this? It doesn't make an awful lot of sense, right? So when a Ghoul can't find dead humanoids or corpses to feed on, they'll just hunt down living creatures, kill them. Once they're dead, then start eating them. That's their whole process. A Ghoul's flesh will never rot, and it never ages, so it will linger in something like a crypt or ruins or a tomb or even a dungeon for a very long time without eating anything, and it will have no sort of adverse effect on it whatsoever. A very, very strange undead creature, the Ghoul. Alright, so let's have a look at the stat block for the Ghoul. And this is really simple. It's not a particularly complicated monster. It has a fairly low armor class. Most undead do. It's only got an armor class of 12. It's got 22 hit points. So that sort of means it can take maybe 1 or 2 rounds of combat and then it's usually out of commission, which is pretty standard with most Dungeons & Dragons 5e monsters, particularly at this particular challenge rating. It's only a challenge level 1. It has a reasonable strength, high dexterity, fairly average constitution. You'll notice that it's not completely stupid, but it has a fairly average wisdom. So that's the thing to pay attention to. And don't worry about charisma because it's an undead creature. It has unfortunately it has damage immunity, not damage resistance to poison. It has condition immunities to being charmed, exhausted, poisoned, of course, and it has access to dark vision up to 60 feet, but a pretty average passive perception of 10. And its usual language is going to be something like common. Now, that could be different. The language that it understands may be more around whatever the original creature was that died. And that's really up to you as the Dungeon Master to decide how that's going to work. Okay, so actions. There's 2 actions. The first one is your bite. It's only a +2 to hit, so it's got a very, very low chance of hitting, even for a challenge rating 1. Usually that sort of means it's hardly ever going to hit its target. It does a reasonable amount of damage, so the damage is like 9 is the average. That's the number just beside where it says hit. And in the brackets, this is what dice you roll. So you roll 2 6-sided dice, and you add +2. Okay? Now, if you don't want to roll dice, you just use the 9 that's beside the brackets. Now, the key feature is the claws. That's a +4 to hit, which is much better, and pretty standard for a monster of that particular challenge rating. Its damage output is only a 7 on average, which is beside the bracket section where it says hit, and in brackets it's 2 4-sided dice +2, slashing damage. The key feature for this creature, though, is the fact that it can paralyze you if the target is hit. So if the target is hit, you do damage, and then, provided that the creature is not an elf or an undead creature, all other creatures will have to make a DC 10 Constitution saving throw. And if they fail that, they are poisoned for paralyzed for 1 minute. The target gets to repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns, and can end the effect on itself if it succeeds. So there's a high chance that even if they manage to fail a very, very low DC of 10, that the following round they are going to probably succeed and therefore get rid of the paralysis effect on it. So that means that a ghoul has to do its work early on and fairly quickly, otherwise you have really no hope of doing anything fairly efficient with it. Now, the key thing with being paralyzed, if you can paralyze the creature with your ghoul and its claws, you're going to get to have advantage. It's now incapacitated, essentially, and that means you're going to get advantage on your attacks, which is good. That means you get to roll 2 dice and take the highest result. It also means that you are going to be able to classify any hit that you make against them as a critical hit. So not only is it now easier to hit your target if they're paralyzed, but you can do double the damage on a critical, which is pretty impressive, right? That's the reason for having it in the first place. Okay, so when it comes to things like monster tactics, there's only a couple of things I think you need to bear in mind when it comes to monster tactics, and that is, I can't cover everything that you could possibly use. You could, if you wanted to, have your ghouls not attack a creature that is an elf. That's really up to you, but I don't think that's necessarily how you need to play them out. That's completely up to you as the Dungeon Master. I'm using this particular scene, which is the Caves of Chaos, and I've got my ghouls over here. I've got the party exploring through here, and we're going to be rolling 1 dice with our attacks. Start off, okay, when you're using your attacks, try to start off with the claw, don't use the bite. It's a no-brainer, really. So ghouls hunt in packs, and what you want to do is use the packs against a single target, because a pack of ghouls only needs 1 corpse to feed them. They do not need to attack an individual each and then feed on that body. So they are quite capable of understanding that 1 target going down is dinner for them all. So surround your victim first with the ghoul pack, and then once you've done that, start using those claw attacks to paralyze the victim. Once it's paralyzed, then you can start using your bite to attack it, kill it, and then eventually start eating it. Now, I know what you're saying. Well, hang on, Fred. The bite's only a +2 and the difference in damage is so minimal. Why don't I just keep using the claws? Well, yes, you can. You certainly could. There's no reason why, if the barbarian winds up here fighting the ghouls and they all attack the barbarian, which would be the most sensible thing to do, right? There's absolutely no reason why you can't make your claw attack, paralyze the target, paralyze our barbarian, get your advantage, roll your 2 dice, take the highest result, and then start rolling your damage. Now, eliminating the bite attack, because it's low, it's basically, the bite attack does more damage, but it's really the difference between 2 4-sided dice or 2 6-sided dice. So it's really up to you. I think my choice would be to go with using the claw if you feel you just won't be able to hit the target. And if you feel that hitting the target's not going to be a problem because you have advantage, then go with increase the damage, because then of course they're criticals. Remember, if you get a critical hit, all you got to do is hit it. If it's paralyzed, those 6 dice that you would be rolling normally for your attack are now going to become 4 dice rather than just 2 dice. And that's quite a lot of damage. This is where something like a ghoul can potentially, it won't usually wipe out a whole party, but it can mess up one character and pretty much take them out of the game fairly easily. The bite attack, for example, with a critical, that would be 4 6-sided dice plus 2. A normal attack in terms of damage is just 2 6-sided dice plus 2. Whereas you're looking at 2 4-sided dice for the claw in terms of damage output, so that's 2 4-sided dice plus 2. Critical would be 4 4-sided dice. So really up to you. I think that the key thing to take away from this is start with the claws and then attack the creature till it is dead, and once it's dead, then you can just eat it at your leisure. That's what the ghoul would do. Now, a couple of other things to bear in mind, which I'm sure that people are going to be asking anyway, and that is, once the target or the victim is dead, the ghoul can feed on its flesh. But if it's still being attacked by somebody, well, it doesn't need to hang about and just let itself be destroyed. That would be silly. Ghouls will flee from combat with their food if they are put into danger or are under the threat of being destroyed or some sort of destruction occurring to them. Okay, they do have some sort of self-preservation. So you can have your creature, once they've downed your barbarian, drag it off to feed on it. And it's going to be now up to the player's characters who are still up to decide whether they pursue the ghouls or not. A ghoul might potentially be able to tear off an arm or a leg, or pull out an eye socket, or tear off a bit of flesh that's already come loose, take that bit of flesh with them and just run away with it. So yes, you can play it out a lot of different ways, all of which is very, very gory and kind of scary if you ask me. Okay, so that is essentially everything I have on the ghoul. But if you have any questions, any feedback, any advice you would like to present, this is your opportunity in the live chat, or use the comments section. If you want to support my channel, you did so by watching this video. I have hundreds more videos for Dungeon Masters and players, and there is actually a series on the Monster Manual that I've started. You can go and check out those videos in my playlists. Or I have 2 playlists for Monster Tactics and Monster Manual Tactics, and you're welcome to go and check out those playlists, and they will sort of give you some advice about how to run some of your monsters. Now, make sure to share, like, and subscribe. Hit the bell button if you haven't already done that. And then, hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s.